Mariana Rondon, the actress Samantha Castillo, and the producer Marite Ugas. And they are looking forward to answering your questions. So therefore, first question, who wants to break the ice? First one at the back. Yes. Please stand up so that we can... I'm from the Sebastiani Award. The biggest box office in Venezuela was Azul No Tan Rosa, a gay background, homophobic sort of a film in the plot. You've been from Venezuela to San Sebastian. What's happening with... Why all of a sudden, for example, a Venezuelan film is the first film... First it goes to American film, and now the film that comes from Venezuela, film against homosexual or homophobic subject matter, and I would say that there are another 3 or 4 films are coming, okay, from Venezuela. Yes, it's quite curious. I think there's quite a serious situation in Venezuela vis-a-vis that issue. I think it's one of the very few countries in Latin America where being homophobic is not considered a problem. There was an episode 3 weeks ago where one of the political representatives of the government, the party that's in government, made some accusations against the opposition or members of the opposition of corruption against homosexual accusations. They say they were considered to be homosexuals. You can imagine how complex that situation became. Complex is a euphemism, by the way. How absurd it is, how ridiculous it is, how dangerous that sort of accusation is. I hope I've answered you. Any further questions, please? Please, well, tell us what I think is very interesting, that we talk about the casting, because the child actor, how did you find the child actor, and how did you explain the background of the... Samuel is a boy that I've known for many... I've worked with his wife, and it wasn't chosen specifically for that, but he was the first person that attended the casting. We saw a lot of other children or younger boys, and he came back every day. He said, I think I can do something a bit better. He always came back and said he could do it a bit better. And then he said, I want the role. But he was a finalist with another boy, and I worked almost a workshop sort of job I did with both of the finalists, until at the end of the day he was selected. For the work was very beautiful how he worked with Samantha. The first time they saw each other, they liked each other, and they felt very comfortable between themselves, and so that helped me very much to confront them and to create that situation of violence, basically, that takes place in the film. It was very important that they felt comfortable between each other, that they shouldn't feel, I'm not interested that they want to act as themselves. I wanted to construct a character and a relationship between both of them, and that was very important. That violence for me wouldn't have been possible if beforehand they had not felt comfortable and they didn't have that very close relationship that they have.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Hi, how are you? From Agencia Telamo from Argentina. I would like to ask you, I thought the film was quite political vis-a-vis of reading a context and a city, a country, and a situation in the backdrop, in the background. What cinematographic, shall we say, references do you have in mind, or have you had in mind, or have constructed for the film, for the making of the film, or for the way you contemplate cinema from your point of view? Well, I like the Dardennes. And I think this world is close to that sort of cinematography. And the closest film in the last few years were Fish Tank that have most influenced me. One of the things that I was more, which was concerned me the most, I filmed this last year. Last year. It's an absolutely contemporary story. It's not to see what's happening out in the street in the day-to-day of when we were shooting the film. So therefore, politics as a public situation has gotten into the household and into the families, and it forms an extreme part of our day-to-day lives as a country, that is to say. Hi, Mariana. I would like to ask you, I think there was a change in your cinematography as of late. I felt at the beginning you were much more allegorical with Marita, and now you're more directed to more realism. Obviously, there's also a lot of allegory in the film, but you've evolved, and why are now you're dealing more realistic sort of subject matter without abandoning the allegories that you use or metaphorical, or all the symbolisms that you've used in your previous films? And another question, why do you believe that Venezuela had spent a long time without participating with Pandemonio, and now all of a sudden Venezuela's come back to the San Sebastian Film Festival? Do you believe there's been a change in the national cinematography or the way films are made in Venezuela? Thank you. I don't know whether my change... No, I don't think it's a change. I think it was a decision of seeking not different paths, but parallel paths. On the one hand, I'm working much more in plastic arts, which is another one of the things I do, and that allowed me to use that allegory, that world of allegories that I use, and my cinematography and my films are directed along this path. This has a lot to do with the manner in which a specific real-life situation affects me within my country. Why hasn't Venezuela come to San Sebastian? I don't know. I'd like to know that. I'd like to know why. I think that Venezuela is very quickly constructing a film industry which is much more solid. It has a great ally, which is the national audiences who are returning, looking at our films again, and quite fortunately they are becoming much more demanding and asking for more and more, and to guarantee a greater quality in the films we make. And a reality shouldn't be complacent with the audience, but it should maintain a much more mature sort of dialogue with the audience. And let's hope that we can come to San Sebastian more and more. We can continue to come more and more to San Sebastian.
Sí, buenas.
Yes, good afternoon. Julia Motisolo from Argentina. I would like to ask you, in the film, there's a very strong look, very powerful, and also it asks questions upon the role of maternity or motherhood. I would like to know whether in Venezuela, beyond the fiction, with a lot of touches of reality that is shown in your film, is it that difficult to be a mother? Practically, you have to become a masculine, as is shown in the film, and also at the same time that mother who's always fluctuating between tenderness and the extreme harshness with her son. I don't want to generalize in the character, but what's real and what's true, Venezuela and many other countries in Latin America is are very matriarchal, and we have to confront a very harsh life, a very difficult life, and on their own. It's almost a solitary path to bring up their children. The place where we were shooting the film, where there's a grandmother, this were most of the shots were taken. Most of these were women who were waking up children, grandchildren, nephews and nieces. There's a great mass of women who are in a situation which is almost a limit situation in a very hard city, a very tough city, and waking up these children in the morning. I think that was all your question. I think I've answered it completely. Yes. Sorry, we can't hear the question.
Sí, un segundo, por favor.
Yes, hold on a second. Hi, I would like to, could you tell us about the genesis of the idea itself of the film? Yeah, I confess this is the first time that I've, a homophobic issue, we didn't know where the child is, who the child is from. It's like almost pre-homo. It's a prejudice. Yes, sorry, it's a prejudice. But normally, when the child is, or the girl, or the son or the daughter is or isn't, and the parents take a position, or the friends take a position. But here, the truth be said, nothing has happened. So therefore, how does that occur to you? Because it's very subtle. And I want to congratulate you in that sense. Thank you very much. Well, mainly what I wanted to do was to build a story upon the issue of intolerance and the incapacity to recognize the needs of another person. Not only their needs, but their freedoms, their desires. On the one hand, I wanted to build it not only, but mainly through their looks, the way the mother looks upon her son, the way the son looks towards his mother, and the look of the audience, knowing things that the mother doesn't see, and he starts, that's what I tried. He should start to get into the situation of what you think. What do you think? Or what's happening to you vis-a-vis this issue? For you, obviously, it's absurd what's happening to her, and it's sustained upon her fears. Everything is, the whole plot is based upon her fears, or not. I think it's a space for the freedom of the audience to seek what's happening to themselves as an audience through watching the story on the screen in this film. Yes. How did you manage the design, the sound, that's all of this issue of off the camera and the shooting, all the background and the script of the insecurity, which is latent as well, and so is the violence. Yes, could you talk a bit about that? Maritere, who is the producer, she's also the editor, and she's worked with the scriptwriter. Yes. The film clearly tries to seek and to find it's as if you were sweating and feeling the city itself. And it's built and constructed at very levels of understanding, and the soundtrack, it tried to fit in and filter its way through to the unconscious of the audience. Every time there's also a hassle and uncomfortable background noise that alters you. And there's a sex scene while they're selling bananas, so therefore at 20 bolivars. So therefore, that's the whole. The city of Caracas here, that's what I wanted to transmit here on the screen.
Sí, un segundo, que llega el micrófono.
I wanted to talk to the actress and the director because I want to congratulate you for the subtlety of how you worked as a director. It's happened. The mother has problems with her son, but the son is unbearable. So therefore, I imagine you didn't slap him in the face, but there are moments where you really feel like, how did you manage not seeing any violence between the mother and the son? Because there was a moment where you had to grab him by the scruff of the neck, and you're holding on as much as you can. Yes, Samuel, as an actor, there was a moment in which he understood in the rehearsals, in part of the games that we did rehearsing, he's unable to do it normally, but as an actor, he went as far as he could of trying to try to discontrol, make Martha's character lose control. And we worked a lot during the rehearsals. When we discovered as a whole, we turned and we did as much as we can. We went as far as we could to achieve that feeling of making her lose control. But I believe there's a lot more violence that doesn't even need, a lot of violence that doesn't even need a slap in the face. I think that I would never have addressed the possibility of him getting slapped, because that's too easy. And quite often I ask myself, and it happened to me a lot, I'm absurdly atheist, but nevertheless I ask myself, this mother is very strong, and she goes out in the street, and I saw some scenes with an enormous violence between mothers towards their sons and daughters. I said, no, God's talking to me. God's telling me, no, don't slap them. Every time I asked myself, I walked out in the street and I saw situations of enormous violence out in the streets. So therefore I didn't feel the need for the story for the mother to slap the son, because there's a lot of other violence at many different levels that are transmitted through the characters. Yes. The violence scenes, we rehearse them by playing games. I think that at that moment, I think that in the scene, there's a scene where I try to cut his hair, and I think it's a scene where physically violence could have become very dangerous, because there's scissors there, because he's on my lap, because of the whole activity. The whole scene with the child could have been dangerous, but I think that we worked it through by playing with during the rehearsals, and I think Samuel was very confident, and I think we enjoyed ourselves. The cuts that we took during the scenes, we had to stop because we were laughing too much, because we played at violence, let's say, and with the enormous commitment that implies, obviously, when acting. But as it's managed through a game setup, I was protecting him, basically. I knew how much space there was to move him through the door. I knew that I wasn't going to hit his head on the door. It was all mechanically done to protect him and to working, and from like playing a game. If we would have worked with tension, the violence, I'm sure, would have emerged. But as it was used, we worked as if it were a game. The violence didn't emerge. Congratulations on the film. I want to ask you that, out of a coincidence, whether you've seen Tomboy by Celine Sciamma, because there's quite a lot of similarity in the script and the way, in the photography and the rhythm and the pace of the film. And on the other hand, the social backdrop, which is hidden in the social issues, are not addressed with explicit violence, but it's hidden through the play, puns on words, or some shooting on the TV screen in that scene. Didn't you want to make that a bit more explicit to try to give it more power to that social issues in your country? The first question, Tomboy, I did know the film Tomboy, and I had this. The script was already written, and I'd already had the money approved when I saw Tomboy. It's always hard when you're making a film, and all of a sudden you discover another film that refers. It's so close to your film, especially the little toys that they were playing with. It's a personal game of mine, and to discover this was a big concern as well. I saw another film which is called Cowboy, which has a similar game, and well, those references, well, you've got to be very strong and to know where you're at, independent from the fact that there's another film that may be addressing the same issue or the way it's done. But to be able to make your film, you've got to be strong to do so. So therefore, and to change your path because somebody else has done a film similar to yours. At the end of the day, I don't think that that's similar. They do address the same subject matter, but what is quite different is that I'm playing by using by the way the mother looks at her son. She is what she's throwing at him, basically, with an enormous amount of intention. As regards to the political issues or social issues that have to do with my country, I think it's dangerous to address that issue much more, because it seems that it's either I launch myself into writing a pamphlet of some nature or a documentary, but what I was trying to do mainly to try to talk about something which is quite political in Venezuela, which is that of intolerance, but not of demonstrating the evidence which is clearly seen. Or I hope it's there. You might say the contrary. I don't know. I wanted to, because it coincided with the moment when we were shooting the film, and these were pieces of news that appeared, but I wanted the very disturbing moment that we were living in Venezuela with the illness that the president had, and it was really disturbing. And it was like the country was dissolving to turn into almost a fanatic or a religious event, almost as if it was messianic. A question for both of you, the director and the actress. The scenes over here, in the sex scenes, she fucks the men practically in two. One, she chooses it and she fucks him, and in that position, and in the other one as well, in the other scene. Is that the need that the character had, or did you want to reflect, or was it something that reflects a reality that exists in that area in Venezuela?
Las dos cosas.
Both things. I think sincerely both things. I do believe in the Caribbean there is an attitude. I don't know. Well, let's say Venezuela. I don't know. That's the context I know best. That there does exist that very powerful position to work upon the film. I observed for a long time. I visited the locations, and I sat down to look at everybody walk by and all of the people in the neighborhood on location. So therefore, the women in that space, in that area, have a lot of control of their own body and the power they have, and the power that they have with their body. In the specific case of Marta, yes, there is a sort of playing and exercising that power, especially in that scene when she's got the uniform on. For her, the power of the uniform is much more. She's much more fragile when she's not got her uniform on. And in the other case, in the other scene, she wanted to recover a job and to give it and to teach her son an example. I think both cases are different. There are two different ways, but it's the same character that has a way of doing things which are coherent. Hi, Mariana. Joaquin Ortega from No Identity Films, an independent production company. I want to thank you. It's a challenge because of the subject matter it deals with. I want to congratulate you. I want to ask you a question on the one hand, and then and you want to ask for a job? No. And to talk about the panorama of the film industry here in our country. Your film was subsidized by the government. Has it received any aid or any? And what I want to ask you is, my film, I found Within the script, I killed 2 Spanish politicians, and so from what I'm finding is there's a censorship, an independent film festivals of the Ministry for Culture. You can't kill a politician on the screen. If you dealing with the subject matter that you deal with in your film, has it been in commercial cinema theaters in your country? Has it been shown? I would like to know whether we're encountering the same problem, because in independent films, the film is being well taken, and it's been chosen, and I'm competing with other films, but I've been denied all subsidies by the government. In the second project, I didn't even ask for them. So therefore, could you tell me that relationship with subsidies and grants, and do they exist in your country or not? Intolerance is galloping, isn't it, as we can see. Maritere is going to talk about the subsidies that we receive. In Venezuela, we've got a cinema institute. It's very similar. It's similar setup to Latin America. It's cinema institutes in which you participate, or you make a tender, you receive a subsidy, you win a subsidy, support, or a financial participation. In the case of Venezuela, of 50 or 70%. In the case of Venezuela, more specifically, this Film Industry Institute is autonomous. Up until the present moment, we've not received any censorship at all, but we've not killed any politician yet. But we have premiered the film in Venezuela, so therefore we'll see what happens if we have to shoot killing a politician on the screen. No, it's just coming out of the oven. We've just finished the film, and this happened before we had foreseen the possibility of premiering it. I imagine it'll be in the first quarter next year, where we will premiere the film in our country. Final question, please. If such isn't the case, thank you very much.